All right, hey, good evening. Welcome to my garage talk. So what I'm going to do is kind of do discussions about certain topics. Today I'm going to talk about LiveScope. Particularly, I want to talk about why I got LiveScope for the Pacific Northwest for salmon and bottom fishing, and how I think that it's going to be the most effective. Now, was skeptical on it last year, a few years ago. I talked to a lot of different people about it, but I'm going to explain to you why exactly I spent the money on LiveScope and why I think that it's going to be extremely effective, and it might not be for the reasons that you think. All right, so let's get to the bottom line. I ended up setting up LiveScope on my boat. I used a custom pole from Headwaters Marine up in Vancouver, Washington. It's an adjustable pole. I've played around with it a few times, and I'm running the Garmin LiveScope Plus with a black box under the dash, and I'm routing it to my head unit up above. So one thing that I really wanted to do was I debated on having a fixed mount LiveScope, which I know some people that do, and that gives you a very narrow cone. But you know, generally you're still gonna be able to use it for the application that I think is the most pertinent. And that would be knowing where your gear's at in the water column, and then knowing where the salmon are in the water column. You know, primarily we're trolling, so you really need to, you know, see behind you. You're not exactly trying to locate them necessarily, but in the water column itself, we're trying to find out where they're at. So the reason I wanted the adjustable one is I can actually look at each rod, and we can decide if that rod needs to be adjusted down, up. Forget about throw line counter out of it. You know, who cares anymore? If we can see precisely where the fish are in the water column at that 25 foot, at that 30 foot mark, we can put our gear directly down in front of their nose, regardless of what the current's doing. If you're in my mind, it's like, I know in this spot, I'm going to run 35 on the line counter. I've had success there. Well, guess what? Maybe we're down there at buoy 10 and we put down, you know, we're up by shipwreck and we're like, all right, I'm going to run 35 on this line. I'm going to troll. Well, guess what? The current's more aggressive that day, and you're actually not in the strike zone. We're learning, you know, let's say we go through there and we're seeing fish at 40 feet. Well, all of a sudden, we now need to drop our gear down to 40 feet, and on the line counter, that might be 50. It might be 60. I don't know. But LiveScope is going to tell me exactly where I need to be. Another big point, a selling point for me last year, was trolling in the Willamette River for springers. I got a phone call from a good buddy of mine. He said, hey, what are you running your gear at? And I said, shoot, we're at 25 on the line counter. And he said, hey man, everything on my LiveScope I'm seeing at 13, 14 feet, 15 feet. He's like, you should raise your gear up. So we hopped it up to 15 on the line counters, which set us a little bit above that. Bam, fish, fish, fish. We got several fish from that. So that was a light bulb moment for me. Like, okay, not just are we locating them that way, but like that is a clear sign. Like my standard would be like 25 feet in 25 to 35 feet on the line counters when I'm trolling in deeper water. That's kind of a standard. I think if you fished for a while in this area, you know, that's kind of what a lot of people just target, just think naturally to target. Well, in that scenario, you brought them up, and we wouldn't have known that without someone with LiveScope relaying that information. So that was a selling point for me. The second big selling point that really just hammered it home that I'm like, wow, I need to get LiveScope. Scenario, we're at buoy 10. We are running down checkerboard on a parallel line towards Ilwaco. And if you're familiar with that, basically the gist is it's about, anywhere from 20 feet to 30 feet, give or take, 35 feet is depth in that area. So I'm running on a contour line of like 25 feet. We're kind of following that 25 foot deep mark, and we're trolling near the bottom. I get a phone call. Hey, buddy of mine's up maybe 200-300 feet in front of me. He goes, hey man, you guys catching any fish? We're like, no, we've had a bite, but not much. He goes, hey, we're in 23 feet of water. He's like, and I'm marking tons of fish on my LiveScope. Every time I get out of the 23 foot contour line, all of a sudden, we're not seeing fish anymore and we're not getting bites. So I said, okay. So we hopped into 23 feet, bam, 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 we got bit. So that was it for me. I was like, okay, I need LiveScope, and it's more to target depth. So we're talking vertical depth, knowing where to put the bait and gear at, and essentially horizontal depth. Where are those fish running? Are they all spread throughout across the river, or are they confined in a channeled area, such as like a 23-foot contour line? These are important questions that with a traditional sonar, I simply just can't get the answer to. And, maybe other people are able to use their traditional more effectively than I am. But typically, I see, okay, there's a mark, and, is that a salmon? I don't know. Who knows? But those two points just sold it. I talked to some guys on the water, and they said, well, I can see the salmon, but it doesn't get them to bite. And that's true. We're not going to get fish to bite, And I think something that I want to, I'm going to stress for myself, and I would recommend is I don't want to fixate on seeing those fish, especially we're talking migratory fish. These guys down in other areas where they're using LiveScope to bass fish, they're locating where these bass are living, or other species, whatever it may be. And they're like, oh, LiveScope's cheating. Well, with a fish that's in it, that's its home, and you're locating it and you're using your gear to jig it up and whatever. That's a little different. We're using it to target locations in the water, temporary seasonal locations for fish that are migrating through. And that can change year to year or day to day. Now, we all, have marks on our GPS where we generally catch more salmon, or where, hey, this time of year I'm catching them on anchor here, or I'm trolling this direction, or, this area a little more frequently. But now we're going to know for sure. They got to be in this column. And honestly, I'm a weekend warrior. I go out on the weekends. I go out during, I have a regular day job. My wife and I work regular jobs, so we have to maximize our efficiency fishing to be successful. And so everything I do is targeted at getting as many bites as possible, having the most effective gear running at all times. And to me, I personally think it's not necessarily, you don't have to have the flashiest gear, the best boat, or anything like that. You just have to maximize. If I'm on the water for 6 hours and I'm only, I've got 10 tangles or this or that, and I got grass on my line or whatever for, 30% of that day, I'm not fishing for that time of day. Or if I'm dinking around with bait, I'm not fishing for that time frame. And if I could fish for the 6 hours I'm out, the 1 day a week or whatever it is, if I could maximize the most amount of time that I'm effectively fishing in the target zone, we're just simply going to be more successful. And I think LiveScope for me is going to help take that equation out and help maximize my time that I can be on the water. Now, obviously, if you're on the water every day, like some of the guides are, and they're fortunate enough to be able to share information with each other, they're already kind of have that advantage of, hey, the fish were here yesterday, and it's good. And if you have buddies that you can network with, or even friends with guides that would share information with you, I think it'll help everyone be more successful. I am not about giving away location secrets necessarily for especially small rivers. That's not my game. I'm not about that. But the big rivers, everyone kind of knows it, and we all kind of, you're going to see the pictures online. That's just the world we live in now. So let's go out and be as successful as we can. There's quotas for a reason. Everybody wants to catch fish, and I believe everyone catching fish helps, strengthen us as a community in general. So I encourage LiveScope. Let's get it. Let's get on board with it. I mean, I'm down all game, and I see it as a tool in your arsenal to use to maximize efficiency. Why should you not buy it? It's going to run you. So my setup without a secondary screen ran me about $2,000, and I installed it myself. So I had the pole installed, but I did all the wiring and installation myself, and there is a video for that if you want to check that out if you're interested. And also send me a message if you are interested or need some help or any tips. I'm more than happy to answer those. What are you getting with LiveScope? We're getting real-time imagery of what's happening in the water at all times. This is super critical, I think, for things like applications like jigging, applications in trolling applications. I did some preliminary testing out at a lake near our house, which only has trout in it, but we kind of ran a basically small scaled down version of what we would with salmon to kind of test, line counters and just see where the fish were, and it works phenomenally. Just playing around, doing some jigging in a nearby bay that we go to, we could see bait fish, we could see the jig moving in real time, we could see fish locations. Okay, bring the jig up, and it's a tool that I think will be very, very useful. No, it doesn't mean they're going to bite. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you know, everyone's like, oh man, like LiveScope, you can see where they're at. So it's game over, you know? No, not really, because they still have to bite, but at least we can, you know, if they're not biting what you're giving them, you know, maybe we change that up and we try something different. That's kind of my plan going into this year. You know, we'll start out like everything else. I start out in the Willamette for springers. Start doing probably trolling next month. There was one caught the other day. Beautiful looking springer by some absolute like awesome, like the goats up there in Selwood. They got that like a 14-pound springer, just shy of it. Now, does that mean there's fish in the river? Of course, but you know, you're talking guys that go out and they grind. They know every little ledge and shelf, and they know exactly how to get those fish to bite, and put their gear in front of their face to get a bite. Now, what do I think? I think fishing is going to be a little earlier this year. I think that the LiveScope is going to be effective for locating early fish. Now, I don't think that's going to mean that they're going to bite, but still, it's going to allow the targeting of those fish effectively. And one thing, I do want to say, like, another thing that like really sold me was a lot of times, you know, you're fishing, you're trolling around. Maybe you're not seeing. I use other boats as like my fish finder. If you're not seeing other boats get bit, you know, kind of general rule, like get the heck out of there. But here's the other thing: if we're not seeing other boats get bit, then, and we're also not seeing fish on the LiveScope, well, it's definitely time to get out of there. Now, if we're seeing fish on LiveScope, I think this is a scenario to utilize. Seeing fish on LiveScope, they're not biting though. Maybe other boats aren't biting. Let's check if that's a tidally affected area. You know, let's think about that for a minute too. If that tide, if you're on them but they're not biting, and you know that tide change is coming up, stay on them. You know, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be staying on those fish, because if that tide switches, it could trigger that bite. And just because they're there does not mean they're on the bite. We can try all these things, but if that tide switches and you know where they're at and you can locate at least a few, your odds are going to go up. No guarantees. There's no guarantees with fishing. We all know that, but you know, it's going to make your odds go up. I went with Garmin. Garmin was, you know, they're the first ones to come out. And one thing I do want to add, like, so I have mine on a pole, and I think if you're going to get it or you have it, be aware of this. Something that I've found online when I was doing some research on it is the actual physical connection to the transducer itself does fray and does separate. Now, this is a common problem. There's some guys that use like a saver. Now, this is really bad for the guys that articulate the cable a lot. I do have mine set up. It's set up in a way where it's kind of taped and protected from the cable being torqued. But just be aware of that with yours. Check on that, because you don't want that cable to separate. You're gonna lose your transducer if that happens. Just something I found in my studies on it, and I wanted to share that in case I can save you a transducer. I just take electrical tape, wrap the crap out of that connector where it goes into the LiveScope. Eliminating dead water. I just talked about it. Like, if you can eliminate dead water, and by that is like dead water, I mean if there's no fish. If you're out there one day, you know, let's say I go out Saturday and everybody's out there and I'm fishing one area. It doesn't really matter name the fishery. It's irrelevant. But if I'm out there and let's say the Columbia, and we're fishing one area that we know can produce, but we're just not seeing fish, you know, we need to move. If we're moving around and we're just not finding fish, well, then it's going to be a boat ride day. But if you can land on, you know, higher concentrations of fish, it's definitely worth your time to to run laps on them, try to get them to bite, try different things, try, you know, sense, whatever. I've been going back to keeping it simple. I think there's a lot of companies that want to sell this scent, this brine, this, that, and the other thing. Here's the thing. Everybody's using all the different scents. They're using everything they can to try to entice up the bait. So what sets you apart is being maybe a little more basic. And that's what I usually go for. You know, I've had people ask, like, well, you know, how are you catching, what's a secret? And I say with springers, one of the secrets is slower than you think, and being in the right water column, and then keep it simple. I usually, straight up, I just run, in my stuffer baits, I just run tuna right out of the can. I almost never use any kind of scent. Maybe WD-40, but like I don't do 20 different scents. I occasionally will play with it, but for the most part I don't. And I think here's the way I look at it. There might be a day, I've seen days where, okay, they want coon shrimp or whatever, they want some kind of specific shrimp flavor, and you're seeing this boat's catching them with that boat. That happens, and I think the dialing in can be effective if you want to carry all that bait every day. I really don't. I don't want to take a couple packages of herring and take a couple of sand shrimps and all these different baits that are gonna end up going bad probably, on ice, and then end up throwing all this out just to maybe catch a springer. So instead, I'm just popping a can of tuna, and we're using that. Maybe we'll add some scent, but I feel like it's a bigger drag net in the sense of you're using something that works in a lot of applications. It may not be the most effective for that day, but ultimately it's not going to be as expensive as just tons of bait getting thrown out. I'm not a guide, so I don't need to catch fish to make clients happy. I just want to get out there. I want to have fun. I want to experiment. And, I just have a good time being out on the water. It's peaceful and relaxing even when it's busy. I love it. I love it when it's busy. It's something I cherish, and I think it's a very special and unique part of where we live, and honestly our culture in Northwest fishermen. So it's it can get crazy, and some people don't like that, but I embrace it. Just embrace it. Love it. We don't have to fight, we don't have to argue, but let's use LiveScope for the benefit of all. So what are you gonna need? If you're going out tomorrow and you want to buy LiveScope, if you go to a shop, you could be looking upwards of $4,000 for the install, the pole, the unit, getting a new head unit, then having them install that. That's going to charge you, you could be upwards of $4,000. And if personally, I do think it's worth it. If you want it done, go get it done. The better the screen you get or have, the better the clarity you're going to get with your transducer. If you want to do it yourself, if you want to do some of it yourself, which I decided not to do all of it myself, I definitely recommend checking out my video. But if you're not well versed in wiring or electronics, I'd probably go take it in. But like I said, just send me an email or something if you have any questions about doing it yourself. I'm happy to answer anything that I can be helpful of. So one thing I want to stress is, if you are installing this yourself, make sure that you run the power cord, the transducer cable away from any power sources, at least 4 inches. And that is in the manual itself, as you can get interference with it. Another trick you could do is wrap the transducer cable in a Faraday tape, which will help insulate it from other electrical signals that can cause disturbances. I did not do that. I kept it isolated from the others, but I didn't wrap it in Faraday tape. But if you have no other choice but to run it by power cables, I would definitely wrap it in Faraday tape, which is pretty cheap. I think it's like $20. I'll drop a link if you want to check that out. So is LiveScope cheating? It depends. I think for salmon, no. For migratory fish, no. I think for resident fish, no, not really. But here's the thing. If you're running these tournaments, and they all, if they're using LiveScope, some of them ban it, whatever. I don't do that stuff, but I think there's an argument to be made that it could be, and especially, maybe you want to do a tournament without it or whatever. But let's talk about PNW, Oregon, Washington, Canada, Alaska applications. Nah, LiveScope's not cheating, because it will not get the fish to bite. You can just maximize your efficiency, and we already are so stringent. They're so strict on what we're allowed to do, how we're allowed to fish, that anything we can do to increase our chances is a win. And maximizing efficiency is a win, I think. So, no, I don't think it's cheating. And, some people say, oh, I don't need it to catch fish. And I don't either. I don't need it to catch fish. But It is fun. It's cool. It's cool to see, and I'm fascinated by salmon and their behaviors, and this will help kind of learn a little bit more, and you get a better insight of what's going on under the water. So it's worth it. Like, it's not. I want to give an example. Like, LiveScope's not gonna make you a better fisherman if you're not effectively trolling at the right speeds, if you're not effectively trolling with the right gear, lengths of leaders, weights, angles, all that stuff. If you're not doing that correctly, LiveScope's not going to matter. If you have LiveScope and you're blowing by fish because you're going way too fast, who cares if you can see them? You're not catching them. So it's not necessarily going to make you a better fisherman. It's just going to make you a more informed fisherman. And maybe if you utilize it right, which I'm going to hope to do, it's going to help refine and tune skills to put you on more fish. And that's the hope for all of us, right? Comment if you have it. Tell me what you think. What is your biggest reason that you wanted it? And is there any drawbacks that you have? Do you obsess about, fish that are not biting? Are you moving on from fish if they're not biting? Like, what are you seeing, and how are you? Drop some comments. Tell me what you think. And I'm looking forward to this season. Going into 2026, it's February still. I'm dreaming about springers. I know some people don't want to get out there yet, but obviously they've been caught. And I'm excited for LiveScope. And if you're excited too, let me know. And let me know when you're going to start fishing. I'm thinking maybe like mid-March. I might do like a shakedown trip in the Willamette or the Columbia. Depends what we start seeing, but check for reports. And let's just see where the fish are at. I'm not sure if I'm going to go lower or upper, but let me know what you're going to do. Are you going to be hitting springers? Are you going to stick with winter steelhead, or you going to do other stuff? Let's just, let's excited for this season. I've heard some rumors about possible coho having some really good numbers out of the Columbia, but I haven't heard anything official yet. And let's hope we have a good fall return as well. One thing is there's not going to be any dual rod endorsement in the Willamette, so even more reason to be dead on it. Make sure your gear's spot on. But yeah, if you like this stuff, please like and subscribe. I'm going to try to do more of these like tech talk, garage talks, where I'm going to talk about gear that I'm either purchasing, and I can talk about what I like. If there's anything you'd like to talk about or have discussions, I'd kind of like to also get some people on this show and do some kind of podcast discussions with them. And I'm here as a garage weekend warrior fisherman for you guys and hunter, and we're just here to make good content for people and make people excited to get out there, and hopefully help you get more animals, get more fish, and enjoy watching us. And we're trying to help educate and try to encourage families to get out there, families and veterans and all that. So if you guys like this stuff, if you like kind of having these garage talks, gear talks, I'd like to do more of them. Just let me know, and let's talk fishing. Stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you like my stuff, likes, comments, all that stuff really helps. And tell me what you think. Appreciate it.